Today I'm creating traditional fall decor filled with autumn vibes. Think sunflower, pumpkins, and autumn leaves. Welcome to the Chic Show. The 5 Under $5 playlist is hosted by Farm Charm Chic and guest hosted by Craft Along with Jay. Check out their channels in the playlist in the description box below. This is a piece I got at Hobby Lobby on clearance. I've had it for several years, and these are just wood shims. I'm going to measure each of these wood shims so that I can fit 3 onto the front, and then I'll cut those down and sand around the edges. Once the shims are cut and sanded, I'm going to use some Titebond Quick and Thick and glue those to the front of this piece. After that dries, I take it outside and give it a base coat of some brown spray paint. Now I'm mixing up some milk paint in the color Sweet Potato. I'll paint the front and the sides of the pumpkin, and I will give it a couple of different layers of paint, hoping for some cracking and chipping. Let the first coat dry, and then I applied my second coat, and this is where I'm going to be using my heat gun to see if I can speed up the drying and produce a little bit of crackle. And you can see here that certainly did work, and now I'm going to go over it with some dark wax, and that will bring out those crackles even a little bit more. Once I have the wax applied, I went back with a paper towel and wiped back any excess wax. And look at those yummy crackles. Now for the back side, I decided to cover it with some decoupage paper. Since I had this on hand, this is some of Roy Cycle's decoupage paper that I got in one of Sonnet's Maker's boxes. And I'm just decoupaging that on using liquid patina. Once it's dry, I'm going to sand around the edges with my finger sander just to remove that excess paper. This will give me a nice clean edge and a finished back. For the stem of my pumpkin, I'm using this corn holder that I thrifted, and I just removed the prongs and glued it on with Titebond Quick and Thick. While that dries, we're going to work on this metal leaf from Dollar Tree. I'm using some of DIY's patina paint in iron and the patina spray, but you could do this probably with just the patina spray and make it yourself. You can Google it, but it's salt, peroxide, and vinegar. You could let this leaf soak in it for a day or two, or however long it takes to get it to the look that you want it. Now for the DIY paint, you put a layer on, let it dry, and then you apply another layer, and while it is still wet, you spray it with the patina spray. The patina spray will activate the rust effect, and I'll leave it overnight and then we'll come back and look at it. Now I did use my brush just to kind of brush it around, tap it around so that some of that spray would get in other places. And here's what it looks like the next day. Now I'm going to go back with this piece that I removed off of the leaf to begin with, and I'm going to tie that onto the leaf and tie it onto the pumpkin. I like that this is a rustic yet traditional addition to your fall autumn vibes. For this project, I'm going to be using 2 of Dollar Tree's ceramic coasters, and they do come in a package of 2. I'm going to paint the top side with Waverly chalk paint in ivory. I'm going to give it 1 coat, and then I'm going to go back with my little sponge brush and just kind of dab the paint on to get rid of any of those brush strokes. The next part, you'll want some kind of a stamp. I am going to be using my IOD Bountiful Harvest leaf stamp and pumpkin stamp. I felt like the orange was just a little too orange and didn't add much depth, so I went over it with the brown ink pad as well, and this gives it more depth. When you use a stamp, you want to place it straight down, keep one hand in place while the other one moves around to make sure you get all of the details, and then pull straight up. I did the same process for the pumpkin. I dabbed on the orange and then the brown and then placed it down onto the coaster. I thought for sure if I let this ink dry, it would not smear, but it did. So what I should have done, and I recommend you doing, is taking it outside and give it a coat of clear spray paint. That way that will seal it in, and then you can come back with this dishwasher safe Mod Podge, which you are supposed to use 3 coats and let it dry a couple of hours in between each coat. This is a sunflower print that I actually got in a book that I thrifted, and I really loved it, so I've been saving it for a project just like this. And I'm using this thrifted wood frame. I'm going to give it a couple of coats of cake batter by DIY paint, but you could use any yellow paint that you like. DIY paint does need to be sealed in, so I'm sealing this in with DIY's Big Top, and this will allow my yellow paint to show through on the next step. I mixed together some milk paint in Black Lantern. Milk paint does tend to crackle a little bit and allow that yellow paint to show through, so that's what I'm going for. But if you don't have milk paint, you could use chalk paint and just use a sanding sponge and get the same look. I'm applying a second coat of the milk paint, and then I will use my heat gun to dry it, and that will usually speed up the crackling effect. You could also use a crackling medium. Lots of different companies make them that you could use under your chalk paint as well. I chose to age it a little bit more by using my sanding sponge. So I just sanded around the edges and some places on the top just to make it look a little more vintage and rustic. Let me know what you think about this little sunflower print. If you're like me, you pick up these doilies anytime you see them in the thrift store. But what do you do with them all? For this project, I'm going to be covering one of these little Dollar Tree pumpkins that I have already painted previously into just a neutral color. This is a yarn needle and just some jute twine, and I'm going to be very careful not to damage the doily, so I'm going in between all of the little stitches, and I'm going to cinch up opposite sides. You can kind of see what I'm doing here. So I'm going one side to the other and then go from the other side to the opposite side, and then I'll do it even 2 more times. So essentially you're doing this 4 times. Once I have it all cinched up around that pumpkin, I just tie it off with that jute twine. Now I'm going to use some fall florals and foliage to press down into the center of the pumpkin in the gaps of the doily so that I don't damage it. For the second pumpkin, I'm using some drop cloth. And again, I'm just using some thin twine and a yarn needle, and I'm going to cinch up the edges of the circle and then gather it up around that pumpkin. Now I'll pop that pumpkin in, cinch it up at the top, and it doesn't fit exactly, but that's okay because it's not going to show. I'll tie it off at the top, and then I'm going to be using some lace that I removed from an old blouse, and I'm going to cinch it up the same way that I did the drop cloth. Now it looks like a collar on the top of my pumpkin or fancy pumpkin leaves. I just tied that off at the top, and now I'm going to add a little wooden piece for the pumpkin stem. This is actually a wooden candle holder, I believe, so I'm going to fill in that bottom hole, and then I'm going to give it a coat of Fusion Antiquing glaze. Once it was dry, I went back with a little bit of jute twine and I hot glued that just around the bottom, and then I glued the stem to the top of the pumpkin. This has kind of a granny chic kind of vibe to it. I have saved the best for last. This is my favorite. I thrifted this little frame at the Goodwill bins, and I made this image on Canva, and I printed it out, and I'm going to be placing it into this frame. First, I've got to remove the backing off the frame and then take out the filler pieces or the backing pieces. And gosh, there were lots of little staples in here, and they were very difficult to budge. Once I got all the pieces removed, I traced around the image and cut it out so that I could kind of see where it was going to fit into the frame. I knew I needed a mat for this picture to cover the white part, so I took some watercolor paper and I put it into my silhouette cameo and I cut out a mat. I placed my mat down into the frame and then added my sunflowers and the backing pieces. And look how beautiful this is. I have to admit, I am not a sunflower girl, but I absolutely love this artwork. I hope you enjoyed these traditional fall decor ideas and all the cozy autumn vibes. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more DIYs that bring autumn and fall ambiance right into your home. And check out the playlist for more inspiration or this video right here. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to share the chic. Bye now.